All right, hello everyone, and we are back for another guide here. I'm gonna focus on for this one, just kind of walking you guys through how to do different wind play techniques. So I've never really done a video on this specifically. Um, so I am gonna probably play, mostly kingmakers for you guys. I really don't have, katanas or anything. That's probably the other ball that I would use. But just be in mind that that's the only reason that I'm probably going to be using kingmakers is just because I kind of feel like that's all I have. So you can get away with katanas. I do have some titans, but I really don't like using them. They don't have any side spin. I mean, they have like half side spin, so that's one of the biggest reasons that you'll see me not use them, unless I really get a isolated case where using it seems more beneficial, like side spin doesn't come into play. Problem is, in the later tours 9, 10, 11, we're virtually talking about a lot of side spin being very, very useful tool, especially on this one. So you're going to see me set up, hopefully, getting the ball out here in play for a wind play where I can discuss with you guys about how to play this hole. And if you guys remember, we just played the tournament here, Royal Open, not too long ago. And, this is a very possible eagle. I made it every time for eagle and gave me a very good chance at albatross as well. So the way that that's going to be possible is by, really taking advantage of that. So here I'm going to come off the top spin just so I can side spin it a little bit more. And we're going to utilize full curl here. And be very careful to, try to favor the right-hand side of the fairway. So that's why you see me kind of great balling it as well, just to kind of promote the ball. You can see anytime that you're going back against the wind, it just kind of levels out. And it doesn't really cut back very much. And here you can see we're getting a wind that's going to be give us a chance. So we're going to talk about these techniques a little bit. And the first type of technique that we're going to talk about, and this is kind of a good situation for it, I'm going to hopefully try to focus on doing a overcorrection type method for you guys. So there's two main methods that I use. One's an overcorrection technique, and the other is a more of like an offset method. And what you're going to see me do, hopefully, depending on as long as I have the distance to do so, you'll usually see me set up, hopefully to try to get the ball guide kind of going towards the hole. So, we're going to keep in mind that this is probably somewhere in the vicinity of the hole here. And I might just put it an extra yard up just to make sure that I do carry that rough here. And an overcorrection method is going to be a very useful tool here. So as you can see, 6.5 is my wind. I'm going to go at least, well, first off, I'm into power. So I am going to go 8 rings here for my adjustment. I did catch a great ball, but I don't think that's going to make or break this one. And here you can see that it's just barely clearing the rough. And so that's one of the biggest reasons that you see me using an overcorrection method there, is because the rough is there. So if I was just to try to play straight up rings and, for instance, not overplay the wind, the compression that happens into the wind of the ball guide might not be enough. So when deciding when to choose whether I'm going to go overcorrection or play more of the offset method. The offset method, if you want to know what I'm referring to, is I'll play more spot up. I'll play exactly the perfect amount of rings, but I'll offset my guide before I start playing the rings. And both cases can be useful, and they have their own time and place and situation as when to use one over the other. So for instance, when we're talking landing zone, if we're talking really bumpy fairways, we want to use more of the offset method because of the fact that we want to make sure wherever we set up our first bounce, that after we play the wind play, it goes exactly, lands on that exact spot when it hits that first bounce after playing the wind. And anytime that there's rough or bunker or whatever into play, that offset method is usually going to be a very valuable tool. Oh, I meant to go to 10. So that's basically how we decide when we're going to use one versus the other. And here we're getting another juniper hole. I'm hoping that we can get to that middle island fairway. It looks like that's going to be a good enough wind. Keep in mind, like I mentioned, I'm going to just use kingmakers. I'd probably use a kingmaker here anyway. Side spin's a very useful tool here. And it should help me, hopefully, get out to this second fairway. And when I back off that top spin, you can see I'm only using 2. It look like I'm going to hit the bunker. I'm assuming it's a little downwind. I'm going to try to land it here with some curl. So I'll play some rings. There's 5. And there's 8. I'm going to play 1 per ring here. My Thor's Hammer 7 has a accuracy of 92, so it's usually 1.1 to 1.2 per ring. And see if that holds. Oh man, it was that close. So that was just a little bit of a bad break. Sometimes it hits that fairway and checks up, and you can see my ball just didn't do that there. It would have been really nice for it to, but nevertheless, it's going to be okay. I do want to at least, add in at least 1 rough shot for you guys. It'd be nice to even add in 1 bunker shot for you guys as well to talk about the wind play methods on those holes, on those type shots as well. So keep in mind, the Nirvana rough iron in general, it has kind of a lower trajectory. So even though you see that the accuracy on my Nirvana, for instance, is 1 per ring, it plays a lot closer to 2. More specifically, when you get closer to a Nirvana 8, especially with a Kingmaker on, I'm going to play it a little bit closer to 1.7 per ring. Maybe 1.65, 1.7 per ring, somewhere in there. So keeping that in mind for my wind play, I'm going to set up to do this. Now, I do want to keep in mind that, the top of my white ring is about where max club is. So I'm going to basically set up according to that. Now, let's keep in mind that, for this shot, I want to make sure, especially after compression, that the ball guide still runs out. So like I said, 1.7 per ring. I'm going to play almost a full target here. Just a hair under. And we're not going to usually use a offset method. And the reason, it looks like I didn't quite go enough rings. I should have just went the full there. So anytime you go into power there, you usually have to add on a little bit extra. But it's also not going to be, you can see what I did with my ball guide. I kept it a little bit deep intentionally because I knew that was going to happen. So I knew it was going to compress. The rate that it compressed, I was a little off. So I didn't anticipate quite enough. I should have just went full there. But I'm only a yard or 2 short anyway, so not a big deal. Had it missed that rough, we would have been okay. But you can see that when you have a wind angle that's pointed towards that bunker, that the ball, even after you play your wind play, it's going to basically drift more towards the direction of the wind. It's going to change your ball guide. So even if you see your ball guide going out into the center of the green, after you actually hit, since it's a side wind pointed towards the bunker, it's going to land much closer to the bunker. Now, I was hoping that I corrected enough, and it looks like it just wasn't quite enough. Now what I usually do here, I usually play it on the front of the green. I'm just going to play this maybe about 3 rings, and we're just going to hit a dunk. And the main reason is because 3 rings, you can see how little I have to play for the wind. It's very minimally, and this is going to be a very straightforward dunk. Only about 1 ring is actually outside of the cup here. So with that being in mind, it's going to be a very easy dunk to make, because you can see that there's still quite a bit of precision on the cup there. The most important thing when doing dunks is just to make sure that you're setting the power right in the center of the shot circle. Don't short hit it, don't long hit it. So you can see the way that the bullseye was there. You know, there's at least 4 or 5 rings of... you can see how small my bullseye was, but there's at least maybe 4 rings for that end-bringer pitch that get lost inside the shot circle. So, you know, the top half of the shot circle has about 2 rings of precision, and the bottom half has about 2 rings as well. And you can see if I don't put it right directly in the middle, that those 2 rings that you lose or gain are going to make all the difference between making that and hitting it too short or hitting it too long. So that's why you need to be very precise with the way that you set up on that. Now, the way that I'm glad we got to this playoff hole here. So this will give you guys kind of another vantage point, viewpoint of this hole. And the method that you usually see me play on this is a overcorrection method. More specifically, if you guys have seen my shootout guides, I talk about how I go an extra 30% wind adjustment on this hole. Now, when I pull back towards min club, sometimes I come on off of that a little bit, but in this case, I'm not pulling back enough that I'm going to. So I'm still going to play the 30%. One thing that you might see me do, which is kind of a method kind of off of the, based off of the overcorrection method here, is you might just see me offset the guide with just a little bit of side spin, just a touch. So you can see here's max club, and what I usually do, so notice how I'm doing it with 1 side spin. It's just going to help straighten out the ball guide. And in terms of my backspin, I might use, 4.5, 5 bars, but I'm going to keep the, kind of the ball guide pointed straight in front, kind of like this. And then 30% extra wind would be put at almost 8.0. So if I was to play 8 rings, I should be relatively spot on here. So I'm going to try to do it in one motion for you guys. Put it right on the edge of the blue, and then go for the shot. And you'll see that the method that I used with a little bit of side spin there against the wind just helps it straighten out. Once the ball actually comes in towards the hole, you see that my line is very straight up and down, as opposed to having a little bit too much of that right hook that you saw my opponent have. So that's kind of just like a hybrid method, and that's kind of another technique that I didn't do it spot up there. That's basically an overcorrection method, because you saw me go too many rings intentionally in order to set up the shot. And I'm going to just lay up here so we can get a fairway shot. So I'm just going to put some backspin on the ball, and we're going to lay up into this fairway. So I will play maybe about 10 rings of wind with a little bit of curl, just to push this ball out into play. So hopefully I can get over that tree. I'm assuming I can. I've never been in this fairway before. But my goal was to, leave it short enough to at least have B52 or sniper into the green. And so we just used an overcorrection technique on that par 3 shootout. And you can see that, being able to switch between either overcorrection, now we're going to use offset on this second shot, no matter what. I'm going to find a way to force myself to use overcorrection, offset method. Anytime that you have a really awkward fairway with a lot of weird bounces, you want to focus on this offset technique. And this is going to be a very true case where it's going to be a very good play. So let's see what we can get here in terms of a wind for a second. And very good. Not only, so using the offset method, first off, you can see I'm very close to max. I'm going to set up according to that. With the offset method, you're going to see me intentionally set up the guide opposite of the wind. So in this case, you're going to see me set up about two ball guides to the right of the hole and just a tiny bit long since it's into the wind. So this is an offset method where we're going to play rings more straight up. You'll see me play just a hair over just a hair over 11 rings, and it's because I'm into power. But you can see with the offset method, what we're trying to do is we're trying to land it, and you can see that was very well executed. What we're trying to do is we're trying to land it very similarly to where we set up to land it. And the advantage to playing it like this, on a shot like this, is a very hilly fairway. If you land left or right or long or short of your intended initial land spot, you might get a really jacked up bounce to where the ball bounces way to the side after you actually play something. So the reason that we use an offset method would be to hit that land zone precisely so we actually get a run out like the ball guide is kind of shows. It's the only thing that doesn't happen is those second, third, and fourth bounces, they end up changing based on the wind direction. So that's what you see me doing with the side spin there, is I was just trying to predict how much to play. And this is more of that hybrid method that you just saw in the shootout. So this is kind of like a fourth method, because usually I'll do it more with just straight up. But here I did it with side spin as well. So not only did I do the offset method, but I also countered it with side spin to kind of straighten out the guide a little bit as well. So I did like a combination of two things there. And that's really the focal point. You either need to, when you're doing a method and you don't, let's say I was about to run out of some green, for instance, and I couldn't side spin it any farther, well then I would need to add some kind of other method, maybe like a curl. So now, since you just saw me and we already just played this wind, I'm going to switch up my method that I play at this time. So now I'm going to use an overcorrection method again, but I'm going to counter it with some curl. So instead of what you just saw me do with the last one, which was side spin, I'm going to do it with some curl. Now, when we're talking about, we're going to go back to that original, the overplay method. That's the way that I play this almost every time, is I play overplay intentionally. So you're going to see me do that again for this shootout shot. But what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to offset the wind effects with curl. So it's kind of a combination of methods a little bit here. So that same side spin that I did, just to kind of straighten out my line, I'm just going to, hit it with just a tiny bit of a little bit of curl. So here you're going to see me keep the ball guide just a little bit short. And again, same, almost identical wind to last time. We're going to play 8 rings just like we did last time. That's 30% extra. But additionally to that, instead of that one side spin just to straighten out my line, I'm going to do it with curl. And the great ball, was not trying to do that. Might end up costing me the shootout. At the very least, we're going to be close. It's going to make things very close. So the great ball there almost cost me the shootout. So something to think about is just be very precise. Hopefully you guys can get your perfect balls. But I do just want to mention, and that little bit of curl I put on was just more than anything, just to kind of straighten out the line. Instead of having it come in with some curl, I want to make, and notice how minimally I do it. Because when I do a 30% overcorrection, it essentially accounts for everything that needs to be accounted for. So you really don't need curl, but the reason that I do it on that shootout is, especially once it gets up into high winds, is you might just have a little bit too much effect after you actually play the hole. You might get just a little bit too much side action coming back down the hill. So more than anything, you're just going to see me just do it just gently based on that fact. And here for this drive, you're going to see me use an overcorrection method again. So I'm going to overcorrect because I want to try to, I have the guide set up in the center and I want to make sure that it sets up in the center. So here you're going to see me go right around 11 rings for a 9 wind, which is way too much for this Thor hammer. But we're using the overcorrection because we know that the wind effects are going to pull it back into the center. So you can see overcorrecting the wind gets it back into the center of this fairway here. I was mentioning to you guys that my Thor's hammer has 92 accuracy, and that's 1.1, 1.2 per ring. So I should have only needed to go about 8 rings there. I went 11. And you can see that the ball winds up roughly right in the center of the fairway, just as we wanted it to. And that's because I used successfully a overcorrection method, basically just assuming that the ball is going to fly and take those extra wind effects and get back into the center of the fairway. Now what I'll do on this tour, for this shot, is I'm going to use an offset method here for this next shot. So you're going to see me keep the ball guide long and to the right intentionally because the wind is slightly pointed to the left. So if I can just aim kind of right in here, just a tiny bit long, and then we're just going to play spot up rings. So we're using an offset method here. Way early on that release. I was running out of time talking too much, and you're seeing it almost cost me the shot. So you do want to be careful. I pulled that 2 rings, which is kind of a mega pull, and it was essentially related to me almost running out of time there. I just didn't have my timing down, and you can see how it can end up costing you. But when you're thinking about, how to set up a shot, you need to kind of just focus on which method is going to work better. And when you have jagged fairways like this, the answer is going to be the offset method, to where you take the guide and wherever the wind direction is, you point it opposite that wind direction. So in that case, you saw it was almost straight, but it was slightly pointed to the left. So I'm going out to the right and long just slightly. And that's going to be a very useful tool. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to try to straighten out my ball line. Here you can see I'm putting just a hair of right spin because it ends up straightening out my ball guide when I do that. So that's how you're going to see me pitch this one. And you also want to make sure that you don't wind up on a glitch spot. And we're just going to pop it up on this green and just let it run into the stick. It's my preferred method, and always scan the green. Always scan the green when you're going about pitching like that. Make sure that your land zone is going to be consistent, whether it lands one ring short, one ring long. You want to make sure all the land zones near that are very smooth. And you saw the way that with no spin, how the ball guide was kind of shifting to the left. So I used a slight amount of side spin to just kind of counter that. Here we're getting a Cliff's 9 now. I think we just played Cliff's 8. So Cliff's 9, ideally it would be nice to get to that last third fairway over there. I might just lay up into this first fairway, depending on where my opponent gets. If my opponent really executes this well, I have to worry about him maybe getting to the green. So depending on where he hits this, will determine if I'm going to lay up or not. And he is in good position to potentially get to the green. So with that being the case, I'm probably going to try to get mine up there too, just in case, because I don't want to give this guy just the easy giveaway win. So you are going to see me get a little bit more aggressive, and with him having a win 4 ball, I should probably make sure that I'm going to as well. Now, I would not recommend necessarily that you need to do this in your tour play, but I really don't care about balls too much. I waste through them. I like holding on to balls like this for tournament use, but at the same time, for this guide and for your guys' benefit, I have no problem wasting a couple. And unfortunately, I still went too long, even with the top spin I took off. So if we get downwind, he's going to get to the green and I'm not. And you could see he would have been able to. It's really nice thing to, really got a lucky break with that wind. There's no way he's going to pull that off. Not even worth even thinking about. I cannot even believe he's... So let's just say hypothetically he hits the shot. It's going to go out of bounds, and he's going to have another roulette ball. So he's going to essentially now play 2 balls on this hole. So not a smart play to do. And we don't know what the next wind is going to be. He might actually have a wind that'll be down towards the hole. So with that being said, he might be able to get there next time. So we'll just have to see. But what you're going to see me do here is just put mine in play. I'll have a short iron no matter what. We'll get a chance at the green. And there you can see I'm just positioning it into the fairway. But as I mentioned, he is going to have to use now a second roulette ball for this hole. And here we can see another headwind. So if he does this again and it goes out of bounds and he doesn't forfeit, it would be a 3rd ball. So definitely the smart play, just lay up there. Now, when we get to a hole like this, where, I really have a lot of problems with this hole. So the fairway's kind of messed up. The green up here also very messed up. But you're also usually aiming to a higher target. You can see that it's kind of raised. And anytime that's the case, the wind kind of overplays. So even though I'm not at max, I usually play this hole very much max. So usually when I use this backspin type approach, you'll see me go at it with more of an overcorrection method. Now keep in mind that I am going to have to probably go at max ring adjustment. And I'll use more of an overcorrection as opposed to a offset method. So here I'm going to go 7 rings on a 9 wind. And I was running a little bit short of time, so you saw me catch a great ball. I didn't want another set. And you can see that basically just firsthand shows you. I had the guide behind the hole, right? I went 7 rings on a 9 wind. So let's talk about that real quick. Because a 7 wind claw 1.5 per ring is 5 rings. I went 7, and look how short my ball was. So I went 2 extra rings. That's an overcorrection by 2 rings. And it's not always going to be like that. It's just kind of a glitch to this hole. And it has to do with the elevation change. And, you know, every time I play this, it always needs to be a max adjustment. You can see I put the guide even behind the hole. And in my case, I just wasn't able to predict the overcorrection quite enough. But you can see I wasn't even at max club, but it still played like it was beyond max. So that's just kind of an anomaly about this hole. And it's just something that I know about, just more from experience than anything, that it just kind of acts fishy like that. So something to keep in mind for that hole. But let's see if we can get another new hole here. See what we can grab. Give you guys a couple more different vantage points of different techniques. I'm not going to play a replay, so I'm just going to back out after 10 seconds if I don't match anybody. Here we're getting somebody. I'm hoping we can get more of a layup wind here. Would be nice, because I know this is going to be a short hole. And we got wind straight in the face, so that works out perfectly. I'm going to go back to my Kingmaker. And keep in mind, you know, especially on some of these shorter holes, you know, you can get away with katanas. I do recommend katanas for Tour 10. You can see how useful side spin is. If you watch any of my guides, I basically demonstrate throughout the guides how, you know, on the par 4s, on the par 5s, definitely the par 5s, some of the par 3 shootouts, very, very useful having that full side spin. Some of the most useful balls in the game, Katana and Kingmaker. You'll see me use very few Titans because it just doesn't have that extra side spin boost. So what I'm going to actually use this time, I'm going to use a pumpkin ball. Same thing as a Kingmaker, but it just has special effects. I like this ball. We're going to lay up. In fact, I prefer talking about the technique. Well, we don't have a lot of pitches yet, so I'll just do the pitch. I was going to just lay up for you guys, but you know, I'll go for this. Same thing here. We're going to do more of an overcorrection on this method too. So even with, you know, I would usually go maybe 10 rings. You're going to see me go at least probably 12 rings for my adjustment. Just even a little bit of power here. And that's more of an overcorrection method because I know that the compression straight into the wind, the ball's going to land shorter. There you see it actually hopping short. You can see it barely making it to this fairway. So that's actually going to put me a little bit more in between clubs. And it would have been nicer to, because I don't think you're going to get to see me shoot a short iron anyway. So I should have just laid up like I was going to, or not mess that shot up, one or the other. But you can see firsthand that overcorrection technique, especially on drives, is kind of going to be the way to play it for the most part, unless you really need to, you know, if you have a tight landing zone and you need to use some kind of offset method to just kind of feed it into a gap, or at least some kind of curl back to kind of straighten out your wind effects in side winds, for example. And let's see if we can't get, you know, a relatively good approach here. I'm assuming we're going to be at B52 range now. So we're setting up a min B52 shot, which is still going to be makeable. In a situation like this, I would probably lean more towards an overcorrection. So here, you're going to see the way that I set up. I'll put the ball guide right on the hole here. And I'll just play an overcorrection here. So if I usually play this maybe 1.6 per ring. So 8 rings should be suffice here. Oh, you know what I didn't? No, that might not be enough. And here's why. So I didn't overcorrect enough. I did more of the exact spot on adjustment. I forgot to go the extra correction. So the overcorrection, because I mentioned I was going to do the overcorrection, I did the spot up. I probably landed it right where it needed to go, but I didn't overcorrect. So I just played the wind spot up ring play. I totally forgot to go the extra rings. So when you see me set up on the cup like that, you need to always go more rings. It's always overcorrection that needs to be done, unless you do an offset method where you're putting the guide to the right intentionally first before going your max ring adjustment. So on this hole, you're always going to use, especially if you guys watch my last tournament guide, especially with a accurate driver like Thor, we're always going to go right on this hole, always, no matter what. And it's going to be very important for us to use an offset method when we have to land in a tight zone. So you'll see me play around with the ball guide and get the ball guide fixed to where it needs to be, and then just let the wind take it back to where I want it to be. So I'm going to show you 2 things here. First, I'm going to set up where you want the ball to actually go. And then I'm going to tweak the spin afterwards. And then we're going to play we're playing an offset method, which means we need to go the correct number of winds. So first, I want to show you where the ball we want the ball to roll off the hill right here. Okay? But we can't use this for our shot because the wind, because the wind is pushing. So we need to come off of the side spin a little bit, come off of the back spin a little bit, and we're going to play our rings pretty much spot up. I'm going to go right on about 6 here. And it looks like it's going to run into the tree. When the wind actually plays, it shouldn't. And here you're going to see it land on the fairway there. And it looks like I didn't quite correct enough. So my bad. I made a mistake. It's not going to come down the hill. Looks like I just sneaked out the wind too. But, you know, that just goes to show you kind of the wind effect. So the way that you spin that is going to change every time you play it. So you can't just memorize my spins. And that shot right there is very vindictive. If you guys saw the way I played it in the tournament, there was a set spin that we used because the wind was fixed every time. So if you guys want to watch my tournament guide, that's one way that I played it. But notice how we're kind of backing off the spin based on wind angle. And plus that great ball to the right is probably the only thing that cost me because I missed my initial perfect land zone and it was a little bit more right. So that's probably single-handedly what kept it up on the hill. But you got to play around and tweak that spin to get that to come off the hill. So there's a certain way that you want to see it come off that hill. And what you're seeing is I was taking that side spin off and also taking a little bit off the backspin because it was a little bit of a headwind. And I almost had it. I was within, all it has to do is just creep onto the green. As soon as it just inches onto the green, you're fine on that hole. So again, I think we started with this hole. We're getting this hole again. And we're going to play, you know, very similar type approach here. We're going to just try to put the ball in play. So here we're going to go back. Now that the wind's pointed to the left, you can see, or left to right, I mean, since the wind is pointed towards the right, I can get a little bit more aggressive with my topspin because my curl will basically straighten this out. Here you're going to see me try to land more centered into the fairway, but this time the curl will allow me to put all this full topspin on. Now keep in mind, the last time it was pointed towards the left, and I had to take some of that off. But you can see that I shoot this gap. I don't have to worry about it shooting long into the left. So do be very careful if you want to go back and rewatch the first hole. The techniques that I put my topspin on were completely different on both shots. It was because of the way that the wind was pointed in each scenario. I knew that if I went for that curl shot with the full topspin, it was going to go too far towards the left and probably wind up in that left bunker, not hop over it. Whereas with that one, I knew that since the wind angle was pointed towards the right, that it was going to be enough to bring it back into the center of the fairway. So these are things that you constantly need to be thinking about. And we mentioned on this hole, the last time, you know, the wind that we got, I think we were able to go for an overcorrection method. In fact, it was ideal for the wind that we got. Now, an overcorrection is not going to work because we're going to have to aim our second shot over into the rough. Anytime that you need to aim over into the rough, and here you can see we're very close to max, an overcorrection here isn't going to be smart. So first and foremost, we're going to put the guide up into the fairway and just kind of, you know, get an idea of where the guide's kind of going towards the hole. And we're going to use kind of a curl back method because we can't use an overcorrection. So here you're going to see me play the rings virtually spot up. So I would usually go 10 rings. And you're going to see me just curl it back against the wind. Now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to straighten out that guide and position it back towards the cup. And it looks like I just curled it back a little bit too much because I'm just shooting out to the right. But you can see that the way that I point the wind and try to use the curl to my advantage to basically figure out, you know, how to get that straight, that ball guide more straight to its original point. When you have a right to left wind like that, the second, third, fourth, fifth hops are all going to be more left. So usually what you would see me do is I might offset the guide to the right. It wasn't an option there. So I had to think of some other kind of method to use. And since my side spin was already at max, I was forced to use a little bit of curl. And you can see with that shot, you want to use very little topspin. I try to use as little as possible. So you could see that I was cutting it very close to the rough there. I try to just get it to the fairway because it gives it the perfect run out speed to potentially albatross that. You can see it doesn't come in very hot, and that's the reason that you see me playing it with that much spin. So I really don't have much to talk about on this hole. Sometimes I go for this rough hop right here. We're not going to do that here. I am going to try to get somewhat aggressive here. Now what we're going to use here is an overcorrection method. So you're going to see me intentionally kind of set up my guide on a good landing spot like right here, and then we're going to overcorrect our rings. If we would usually go about 7, I'm going to go at least into 8 rings here. So there's 8.5 rings. So using this overcorrection is hopefully going to get the ball guide. It didn't roll through. So you saw the ball guide, it was running through, and here it didn't. When I actually hit the shot, it just checked up. Usually downwind, that isn't a problem. So that's why I use the overcorrection method. Keep in mind, if you don't use that overcorrection method, you need to use an offset, which means that you're going to have to, since the wind is pointed towards the left, you're going to have to aim your guide on that second hop more into the rough, because once you actually play the ring spot up, and I usually do use very 1-to-1 there. So whatever my max club is, I virtually play spot on. But I usually use an offset method. I can vary between the two. It doesn't matter. So what you saw me do there was an overcorrection just to show you guys the overcorrection. So I was showing you that I was going an extra 2 rings just to account for that and get it to run more towards the hole. And it almost worked out, and had I got a little bit better of a break, it probably would have. And here you can see I was able to get the perfect ball from the rough anyway, so it's going to just run up there into the pin. But you can see that the line, that overcorrection method, basically, it changes the first hop, but then all subsequent hops, 2, 3, 4, are more like the guide that you see originally. So it's basically overcorrecting intentionally to try to just straighten out that guide. And, I usually do use the offset method on this hole when I go about playing this one. But I wanted to just, since we've been doing a bunch of the offset method, I wanted to just do an overcorrection method for you guys there. And unfortunately, it didn't work out for me because it didn't roll through the rough. You see, on my ball guide, none of those were really catching. But then when I actually went to shoot it, it kind of went different than what you actually saw on the ball guide. And here we're going to go to the juniper hole, par 5. Now, it would be ideal to give us a albatross chance from this left. Now, anytime you get a headwind, you always want to try to go this left way. It can be very challenging, but with a Thor 7, for example, hopefully it'll make our life a little bit easier to get out this way. So what you're going to see me do is aim more right towards here. And hopefully that ball guide, since the wind's pointed towards the left, it's going to hopefully just correct itself and get more in line with where it needs to go. Here you're going to see me play about 7 rings, which is somewhere right around here, maybe just a tiny bit of curl, but you can see that I'm going to need just a tiny bit of power as well. Let's see if I can't just sneak up onto this. And once you get it out there in the center, it usually does hold on. So the great ball almost cost me because I ended up just a little bit more left, but was able to just catch it. Now keep in mind, you only want to usually go over to this side when it's a headwind here. And you do want to probably back off of a Titan ball just because of the fact that, you don't quite have the wind resistance. Katana is a much better ball for headwind shots. And this shot is very risk reward. If you or your opponent doesn't pull it off, it can be the difference between basically just winning outright. And here you see my opponent does shoot it out, but it does barely just creep in. And depending on the wind, he might still be at a very disadvantage anyway for hitting way too short. But he did get a tailwind, so he'll be okay. Now let's talk a little bit about what we would do here. So anytime that I have a shot like this, you're going to see me probably use an offset. So you're going to see me intentionally set up, and the big question, now this is actually kind of a tough method to use here, but we're going to try it anyway. I'm going to basically offset my guide short and to the left, just a slight, and then we're just going to play the rings virtually spot up. There's about 10 rings. And notice how I just set my ball guide up left intentionally, because I know once the wind actually plays, that it's going to shoot much more towards the hole. And that's what you see my guide doing. In fact, I didn't even quite play it enough, because you can see that I still ended up to the right of the hole. I went my ring adjustment. You could see that I kind of rushed it a little bit, but I went one full entire target using my shot button. I stuck the very edge on the bottom. I stuck the very bottom edge of the bullseye on the shot button, and then pulled to the maximum after adjusting. And here you can see, the effects of my opponent's drive. You can see that he's just going to be able to get home because of the tailwind. So it just goes to show you that going over here, you still have to very well execute in order to salvage this hole for you. But if you underplay your wind, you might end up in the sand. But that bunker shot is basically all about perfect ball. It's very short, and virtually, if you get your perfect ball anyway, you will make it. So, but just keep in mind, the two different methods, and definitely be able to pull them out at any time, because certain shots are going to be better set up for you to do one or the other. And in that case, in my opinion, it's much better to set your ball guide up in the middle of the green and then let the wind carry it over. And anytime that you're landing on kind of a crooked fairway, as you saw I was, that land zone is going to be very important. So being able to play proper ring play and getting the ball to land for the first hop more where it was intended to do is going to be very important for you to get that ball running towards the hole. So Juniper hole 5 again. We're going to get another go at this one. In fact, I'll go the other way if they give me a side wind. Oh, even a tailwind. So you would never go out to that fairway, in my opinion, on a tailwind, because it's just too narrow of a target. You don't want to go this way as your normal way. Okay, it's just not a smart play. It can be done. Don't get me wrong. If this guy does this right, it'll pay off. But a lot more variables. And I don't recommend, using navigators for Tour 10, especially if you struggle with Tour 10. Once you get to a good enough understanding, you see the way that I play. Once you get to that certain level of understanding, then going for that shot is okay. But until that point, you can see kind of the downsides to going for that. It's going to be more of a gamble. And here, to put all this topspin on, you can see that it's going to shoot the ball down towards the rough here. And, I'm just trying to visualize, maybe like 15 rings down. So if this is my normal setup here, then I'm going to try to, make sure that here's 5, 10, 12-ish, somewhere in there. You're going to see me use all the curl I can, just a little bit of power, because I don't want it to carry too far. But the goal here is to get a lot of that right momentum. And you can see that I land very centered. But the right momentum is is important because you don't want that ball to end up cutting into that left rough over there. So I'm going to play a little bit more cautious on a wind like that, especially with my Thor's hammer on. I would have played that a little bit differently with Apocalypse, but with Thor, you're going to see that I'm going to play it extra cautious just to kind of keep it away from there. And you can see just, playing with navigators really makes your life a lot harder. Not having that side spin, especially on some of the shootouts too, is very critical. This hole can, you don't ever want to lose sight of the goal, which is, get to the shootout, just play safe, smart, strategic. And here you can see we're going to use, first off, I'm going to do an overcorrection method. So if my normal win play was, I usually play 0.8 per ring. So that would be about 8 rings would be my usual. You're going to see me overcorrect. I'm going to go about 11. But additionally to that, I need to curl it because you could see that my ball guide was to the left. So A, I'm doing an overcorrection. B, I'm curling. So you can see it looks like it might have changed my landing zone on the fairway because the way that the ball hopped over towards the hole wasn't very good. So using an overcorrection, especially on a hilly fairway, isn't necessarily the best route to go because it can change your land zone and make the ball bounce different. So usually you'll want to scan the fairway when thinking about using that as a method. But even that, it's never surefire. And, but also, I just got to hone in on how much curl do I need to use. That's the question. So it's going to, be up to you to figure out how much extra you need to play. So the best advice I can give you for that hole, don't force the issue. If you don't think you can get out to that left fairway, don't try it. It's not the normal way that you want to play that hole. It's kind of the, if I can't reach the green going the right direction, I might as well maybe try to go out to the left. But it's also going to require a very good driver usually, a Puck 5 or Thor 6 and up. But more importantly, using Kingmaker is going to usually be the difference maker for you as well. But on a tough side wind like that, I don't even recommend shooting for it. You're better off just playing the safe shot over to the right fairway, making sure you get home in 2. So let's talk about this hole. What I usually use here is an offset method on this hole every time. So that's what we're going to try to focus on here. And I am going to put as much top spin as I think I'm going to need. You can see this is a very, very tricky wind. We're going to do everything we can to get the ball out there. And you can see that I'll cheat my shank to the right here. That is very intentional. I want you guys to know because I want to make sure that it stays away from that left rough. I know when I'm going against the wind like that, I can miss slightly to the right to keep it here. And now you can see that I'm way into the middle of the fairway because of the way that I, made sure that my miss was away from the sand. So let's talk about the second shot. This is going to be a very, very challenging shot. Here you can see my opponent not curling it away from the bunker. And especially with a hard wind like that, can cost him this hole. So let's see. Here you can see that it's going to be now curling towards the sand, and it's going to be very tight. See, you can see that he did pull it off, but it was that close. So you do want to be very careful on that. But like I said, we're going to use virtually almost every time you see me play this, it's going to be an offset method. Now, I usually do play this a little bit more 1 per ring because it's a very uphill approach. But keep in mind that you're going to see the way that I use I'm going to keep my guide short and to the left before I start my ring adjustment. And I do, like I said, I do play very close, much more spot on, one per ring, because it is very, very uphill. So here you're going to see me go, there's 10, 12 and a half, somewhere in there. It looks like I just missed it. So that's more of a spot on offset method. So you see me offset my guide. I'm just trying to predict. And you can see that the way that, I choose my offset, and when we use this method, we're trying to focus on keeping our land zone identical to where we started to aim. That's the very big key. And we're just putting the guide out towards the side and trying to predict the way that, based on what the wind angle is, how the wind is going to affect the ball. And when it's down and to the right, we know that it's going to make the ball pitch forward a bit and also a little bit to the right. And there you can see a little bit of an overcorrection that can happen downwind until you get some confidence in the way that you need to play the wind. It can take some trial and error practice for you guys, especially early on in Tour 10. Let's see if you can't just pop this in real quick, and we'll get to another shootout. You really don't have to play the wind here. You just got to put it basically right edge. Good to go. That's good. Overthinking it. So just don't short hit these, or try to keep it in the center of the circle. I recommend. You see my opponent's doing a little bit of curl. It doesn't make a lot of sense to curl these. Still going to catch the edge and kind of luck into that one. But it doesn't make a lot of sense to hit. Like if you want to curl something, we'll just put some side spin on. You want to keep those in the center of the shot circle. You don't want to use curl unless you absolutely had to, for example. And here you can see we're getting another wind. And what I usually do for this is play some side spin, and I'll use more of a offset method here. You won't see me try to not use it. You're going to see me keep it long and high intentionally, because it's going to make playing this a little bit easier. And what you'll usually see, especially when I go up on the rocks, you're going to see me play more one per ring here. Let's see how this looks. Definitely perfect ball is going to be a very useful tool for you. Here you can see that it comes off the hill, and not too bad overall. And we're just trying to basically, find that land zone. That's the one time where I end up using a bit too much on my guide there is once I start going up onto those rocks. So you can see that I start aiming onto higher elevation. So you're going to see me start to cheat almost towards one per ring. It's the one time that I will do that. And if my wind was the other direction, I might play this on the other side of the rough. So you're seeing me play it very specific to where you saw me aim based on the wind angle. So I might go to the right if I have a right to left wind. If I have a left to right wind here, then you're going to see me play to the left. So you don't always see me play it on the same sides there. And let's see if I can't just grab one more game for you guys. I know I'm probably coming up on about an hour for this tutorial for you guys, but I wanted to give you a nice thorough discussion on a lot of different, these are the things that you always need to be thinking about on every shot. And you can see what happens when you don't. If you scroll back to that one greenish point hole where I hit that B52 into that green, and I was going to do an overcorrection, and then I just played the wind straight up, and you can see my shot was way off because of that. It's the only time that I did it, but you can see that alone essentially cost me. Who is this guy? How does he have all these rookies and he has a Thor 7? That is spending money right there. So this guy has entirely bought that Thor 7. That is expensive. Not one chest that he could have won it from. Well, I think he might have had one pro finish. Yeah, one pro finish. And it was only a 58th, so. So you can go for this green here. This is a tough win to do it. I'll try. You have to cheat the very right side of the island when you do this. I'll just come off of the max power just a tiny. You do have to be very critical with your perfect ball. But you'll see that the ball, it should drift right into the center. Doesn't look like I quite put enough topspin, but good enough to get it out here. And what I usually use for pitches, which you have yet to see me do one, I usually use an overcorrection method for pitches as well. So let's talk a little bit about the overcorrection method for a pitch. So the one thing to keep in mind, the shot arc on a wedge and a sand wedge is very, very high. So you always need to have either an overcorrection or some kind of straighten out method because the wind is really going to be very, very high in these cases. So first thing I'll do every time is I want to figure out if I'm at mid club, max club, where I'm at. So that's the first thing you'll usually see me do, is I'll size this up. So here's max club. What I usually try to do, here you're going to see me put it at half club. So I'm going to basically estimate half club, and I'm going to see if I can get this to go into the hole. And it looks like I can. So now that I know that I'm at half club, that's 2 per ring instead of the usual 1. However, that doesn't take wind effects into account. So I can't just play it spot up 2 per ring. I need to do an overcorrection. So here you're going to see me play 6 rings for this wind instead of the usual, 4? And the reason that I do that, and you can see that I just miss it over the edge, is because without that overcorrection of the wind being into the face like that, it's going to come up short. And there you can see it going over the edge of the cup and still coming up short, even with the overcorrection. So keep in mind that the way that you need to do everything is a little bit different. So you need to kind of make mental notes of these. If you're going to do an overcorrection with a wedge, that's the way that I use it. I always do overcorrection on my wedges. I never use an offset. It would just be way too hard. So I always do an overcorrection, which technically changes my landing zone. So you want to make sure that you're putting it on a very consistent spot to make sure that you don't have a problem with the ball landing a little bit north or south of your intended land spot, or west and east if it's a side wind. Side winds are actually the hardest to make those. So let's see if we can't get this one. Half decent approach. What you usually see me do here is I'll use an offset. This is kind of a more challenging win for me. I'll make sure that I definitely put it on min club or very close to min club. But we need to take into account, like I mentioned, I'll usually use an offset. So here you're going to see me keep the ball guide short intentionally. So notice how it's short, maybe just a little bit. And then we'll just play ring spot up. Additionally, you're going to see me, just to straighten out the wind, you're going to see me curl it as well. Here you see perfect ball. Now notice how I kept my ball guide short and I tried to focus on getting that landing zone a little bit more spot up. And here you can see that it shoots in right towards the hole. So you just need to try to predict, and if you guys want me to set some numbers or values as to how much you need to predict, here's what I'm going to tell you for, you know what, I'll just, if you guys check out the description of this video, I'm just going to end it and I'll put some values in the description so you have, kind of a general guideline for using that offset method. It's going to, it's really going to be a visual type thing, trying to see how much shorter you're keeping it. But with some trial and error, you'll be able to get it. But I'll give you guys some values in the description. So be on the lookout for that. And good luck with your Tour 10. Good luck with Tour 9 or wherever you guys are dealing with right now, struggling, grinding through. Aside from that, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video and are starting to hone in a little bit more on these win techniques. So good luck and catch you guys next time.